This simple looking cocktail is definitely worth checking out. Let me show you how to make a green hat. Welcome back to the channel. I'm Matt, I'm the whiskey nerd, and like I said, this week I'm making a green hat cocktail, which is a very nice, simple enough cocktail that looks similar to other things like an old fashioned, but it's just different enough to keep things interesting in a very, very tasty way. I got the idea for this cocktail when I was looking for something to do with this Green Chartreuse, because in case you aren't aware, Green Chartreuse is getting, well, all Chartreuse actually is getting very, very rare and hard to find in the world these days because the Chartreuse monks have massively cut back on the amount of Chartreuse they're making. Now, I was lucky enough when I was passing through an airport in France a few months back to snag a couple of bottles like this, but they're fairly small, so I'm looking for interesting ways where I can use my Chartreuse in limited quantities so I can get the most out of whatever supply I've got left, and that's what this is here, a green hat cocktail. It's a very simple enough cocktail. It just uses whiskey, sugar and bitters with a little bit of Chartreuse floated over the top to add some extra herbal, botanical notes and also some nice sweet notes, because in case you aren't aware, Chartreuse is itself quite sweet as an ingredient. The whiskey I'm using in this cocktail is the Powers Rye Whiskey because this is a rye whiskey cocktail. It comes in at 43.2% ABV, so it's got a nice amount of weight to it, but unlike an American rye, the Powers Rye wasn't aged in virgin oak casks, so it won't have that same kind of oaky, spicy bite that an American rye will have, but it does have all those classic kind of botanical, herbal flavors that you'd expect in a rye whiskey. For the sugar, it's just a plain old sugar cube, and for the bitters, of course, it's going to be Angostura Bitters. There will be a little bit of a lemon garnish over the top at the very end, but that's all there is to this very simple cocktail. In some recipes you'll see online, people say you build it in a rocks glass with the ice. I personally prefer the look of it in a Nick and Nora glass, so I'll be building it in a mixing glass first and then transferring it into that rocks glass. So I'm going to get my mixing glass, and first off, I'm going to pop our sugar cube into there. I'm going to put 2 dashes of Angostura Bitters in there, and we're going to use those Angostura Bitters to kind of soften up the sugar as we muddle it down, because we're going to be muddling that sugar cube in the Angostura Bitters to kind of get all the sugar basically just worn down, and so it can mix into our cocktail very nicely. So just going to macerate this in the Angostura Bitters for just a couple of seconds just to get everything nice and broken down, so that when we add in the rest of our ingredients, it will of course just come nicely. Okay, that is nicely muddled, but there's still plenty of sugar on my muddler, so I'm going to get my whiskey. I'm going to get 2 ounces of this lovely rye whiskey and pour it into there just to make sure I get all of that sugar off the muddler before I add my ice, and stir it all down to make sure it all gets nice and cold. So I can get all my sugar off my muddler, and now I'm going to add in a nice rock of ice, stir it away for about 30 seconds just to get everything nice and cold, and then it'll be ready to, almost ready to serve. Okay, I think this cocktail is nice and chilled, so we're getting ready to strain it out into a nicely chilled Nick and Nora glass before we put that Chartreuse over the top at the very end. So just going to pour it away, nice and simple, into the cocktail glass, just like that. And then we're going to pour over our Green Chartreuse. Now, you don't need a lot of Green Chartreuse to give a lot of flavor. You just need maybe about 5 ml, so about a bar spoon of it. So we're going to go in with our bar spoon, pop that just at the very top so that it floats on top, giving it kind of like a little green hat. Now, you can't really see the green hat, but I can definitely see it floating up there. But before we finish off this cocktail, it's going to be garnished off with a lemon twist. This is just very simple. Express the oils over the top, just like that. And that right there is how I make a green hat. Now, before I taste this cocktail, if you're new here, scroll down, hit that thumbs up button, hit that subscribe button. I put out whiskey cocktails every Friday. I put out whiskey reviews on Wednesday. So if you want to see more like that, make sure you hit the subscribe button. And while you're there, let me know what kind of cocktails you'd like to see me make in future. But now let's taste this cocktail. I can definitely see a little green sheen on the very top of the cocktail, so I know that Chartreuse is going to have a nice big impact. Yeah, the Chartreuse definitely has a big, strong, heavyweight, kind of punchy impact in the cocktail, but because it is based on rye whiskey, because it's a rye whiskey kind of base which has that herbal botanical note already in it, it's not like a clash of flavors. They're not fighting each other. They work really well together. The Angostura Bitters is just like your classic salt and pepper seasoning. It works with pretty much everything. The little bit of lemon at the very end on the glass gives it this almost like a little lighter note, like it makes it a little lighter, and then once you take your sip of the cocktail, you get that heavy weight of the whiskey, the heavy weight of the chartreuse, and it makes for a very, very tasty little cocktail. It is quite like an old fashioned, like it has that whiskey sugar bitters obviously, but then because of that chartreuse, it really does lean into the herbal botanical side of the cocktail. It's familiar, it's nice, but it's a little different, and if you're looking for something a little different, definitely worth checking out. So I'm going to keep on enjoying this, and I will see you next time. Sláinte.